Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John. As always, thank you so much for being here. Great topic for you today. Let's do it. What's some scary shit that you've experienced? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was about to go on an elevator, and when the door opened, there was a technician working inside. I stopped and turned around to walk down the stairs, but the technician told me he was finishing up and that it was okay to use the elevator. When I got on and pressed the first floor, the elevator dropped like an inch before the door even closed. I stood there frozen, looking at the technician to reassure me. He just casually said, "That's not supposed to happen," and slipped out as the door closed, leaving me behind. The elevator worked fine, but that shit was not cool. One scary thing for me was finally experiencing the bystander effect. People will turn a blind eye because they don't want to get involved even if something very wrong is happening. A man pinned me to the floor by my arms and was on top of me in a very public place and was trying to kiss me. I was telling him to let me go and tried to kick him off, and everyone just kept walking. When I was around 10 to 11 years old, my family was on a road trip and stopped to get gas. My mom and I went inside the gas station convenience store while my dad refilled the car. My mom started chatting with a worker, so I wandered off to go look at the snacks and candy. I noticed this man who had his phone raised to his ear and was just walking slowly through the aisles. I just assumed he was trying to call someone and focused my attention on all the junk food. Shortly after, my dad came inside and was heading toward me, but as he was approaching, he was able to see the creepy man's phone screen. He was pretending to be on a phone call, but he was secretly videotaping me. My dad immediately yelled to the workers to call 911 and began to chase him. My dad and a worker chased him through the store, but he escaped through the back door, got into a white van that was left running, and sped off. We weren't local, so we never found out if the police caught him or not. Well, fast forward to when I'm in college. My dad calls me up to tell me a murderer had been caught in the area we'd been visiting back then. The man had kidnapped two young girls, brought them to the woods, assaulted them, and dismembered their bodies. He was caught because one of the girls had posted a selfie right before she went missing, and he was in the background. Then my dad sent me the pictures and said, "That was the man I caught filming you. I'll never forget his face." I was in the Marine Corps, thankfully during peacetime pre-9/11, and never experienced combat. I did briefly serve overseas, and while on duty one day, there was a terrible miscommunication in which I almost had to shoot multiple foreign civilians. The captain on duty with me told me to draw down on them and said to me, and I'll never forget it, "If I tell you to start firing, unload on those motherfuckers." Whoops. The MFer in question, about 3 of them, threw their hands up and were pleading with me not to shoot. Within a few minutes, the miscommunication had been figured out. They were supposed to be there, but no one ever told us they were coming. Anyway, I was scared as F for about 3 minutes that I was going to have to murder people. Taking a shower in Bagram when the Taliban exploded a 15,000-pound bomb outside the wall and knocked me out of the shower. Got up and washed the soap out of my eyes and walked around to the other side of the shower, and the whole wall was blown away. My husband had been sick, and I walked in to check on him. His eyes were wide open and his breath was rattling in his chest. I tried to wake him. I yanked him upright, crying, "Don't do this to me." Then called my brother-in-law, who lived with us, to come up and help me while I called 911. He helped me get him to the floor, and we started CPR, but I knew in my heart he was gone. I was terrified and hurting, and I guess what will always stick with me is the feel of his cold, dead lips as I tried to breathe life into him. That night will be the scariest shit I will ever experience in my life, and the most traumatizing. That's just brutal. I'm sorry for your loss. Hope you're doing better now. It's tough. I was in Austin at South by Southwest, standing on a street corner after leaving the line outside of Mohawk. I was about to cross the street when a car sped around the corner, through the barricade, and accelerated through the crowd of people. Bodies flew into the air. Shoes and clothing items looked like confetti. 3 people were killed, maybe 20 plus injured. Horrifying. I've also seen a motorcyclist get run over by an SUV, instantly dead. Recently, I saw two men who had just been hit on the side of the highway changing a tire. The driver's side door had been ripped off, and one of the men had been decapitated. I've seen at least 3 cars on fire in the past. I travel a lot for work, and I guess that makes me more likely to see terrible accidents. My brother was hit by a car directly next to me when we were 6. He died on impact, and I was sideswiped so hard and fast that I spun around and lived with only some scrapes and grass stains. I still have a little scar on my knee. If I had been walking on the gravel instead of the grass, I would have been the one that died. That one time, I was on the top of the stairs in my church, filled with sadness and desperation, and a voice in my head said I could throw myself to the bottom of its 17 steps and no one would care. And if I started seeing people jumping over my corpse, I ignored it and reprehended the thought, only to discover that the given stairs had exactly 17 steps I had not previously paid attention to. Watching my dad die of lung cancer. My whole life, cancer seemed to me like something horrible that just happened in the movies. Compared to watching your closest loved ones have their flame slowly snuffed out, shit's horrible. When I was 4 years old, I went on a water slide that emptied out into a lower pool. However, the end of the slide was a significant height off the ground, and you would fall about 8 to 10 feet into the water. So when I fell into the pool, I got caught in a whirlpool underwater from the drainage water that was coming from the water slide. Long story short, I started to drown because I was taking water in from being unable to hold my breath. Luckily, there was a lifeguard on duty. He saw that I wasn't coming up, and he jumped in to save me. I've never had any sort of spiritual moments in my life. However, when I saw the lifeguard swimming down to get me, I swear I thought he was an angel coming to save me from death. I will never forget how the sunlight was shining through the water as he swam towards me. I truly thought he was sent from heaven. If he had been even a second later, I probably would have started to take in significant amounts of water in my lungs. I mean, from your perspective, that was an angel, be it just a regular person or something else, but that's a moment, and you remembered it. It's pretty wild. Not quite scary, something different. When I was about 9, my dog had puppies. This was her 3rd litter, so I was pretty adjusted to the process at this point. Anyways, it was the weekend, and I'd woken up late. My parents were out, but I went into their room because that's where the whelping box was. They were all asleep in a pile, pretty normal. One was led under her mother's head, so I went to make sure she was okay. I lifted her up and she just flopped in my hand. It's difficult to describe, but in that moment she felt so much heavier. Turns out all the pups had died of an infection overnight. I didn't know what to do, so I put the puppy back and left them to be found. I've never mentioned that I knew they were all dead before anyone else. Being followed after a very creepy date. I ride my bike home and get a strange feeling he was following me. I rounded the block and went into my usual pub. Told them all about the bad date, then a tap on the shoulder. It was him. I was pissed. He was very overbearing and angered the bartender didn't remember him as he claimed to be a regular. I was in fact the regular, lol. The scary thing is everyone knows him in town as a stalker and has a story about other girls saying he shows up at their house and refused to leave. No one asked me if I was okay or if I needed any assistance getting home. I stayed at the pub until midnight so I could be sure he was long gone. That was the night I realized the only person who has your back is you. No one I've told about this before has ever believed me, but here goes. When I was 10 or 11 years old, I was in Boy Scouts. We knew where there was a natural spring and resulting waterfall of the Boy Scouts of America camp property. There was an old half-Indian man who lived next door who swore that the spring was haunted, but we knew better. I wish we'd listened. The first weird thing that happened was that as I was watching the campfire after dark, the flames froze for about 3 seconds. Didn't move, flicker, just paused. I instantly froze, and they started moving again. I asked the others if they had seen it, and was immediately ridiculed. One of the other boys, who had always been a bully, then decided to smack me around. I wasn't having it, and grabbed a log from the fire to hit him with. After doing so, I realized that the surface of the log that my hand was touching was glowing coals. My entire hand was engulfed in flame. I immediately dropped the log, but there was no damage to my hand. This was the second weird thing that happened that night. The most horrifying thing was yet to come. Eventually, I go to sleep. I was wrapped up in what they call a space blanket, which is a mylar blanket that reflects a lot of heat. I don't know what time I woke up, but I was awoken by somebody touching my shoulder and shaking me. When I looked to see who it was, I saw that it was myself, without a head. As you might expect, I freaked the hell out. My headless doppelganger fled into the woods before anyone else got up. Like I said, no one believes me when I tell the story. They insist it must have been a dream. It wasn't. The morning proceeded along from there, and I never fell back asleep. Once, when I was very young, I locked myself out of my apartment. The car keys were inside, and it was snowing very hard. As I was walking to my workplace about 2 miles away, a man stopped and offered me a ride. He got out and opened the door for me, and I got in. Once inside, I realized he'd removed the door handle, and I couldn't open it from the inside. He also had a bottle of vodka open and was drinking it like water, and a few other empties in the floorboard. I was scared to death, but he took me straight to the place I asked to go and dropped me right off. I was 12 years old at a sleepover. My friend and I decided to jump on the trampoline at like 10 p.m. We were having fun when my friend just stopped jumping and said, "What the F is that?" and pointed at the barn. On the roof, it looked like a naked man with a larger deformed head and red eyes. I remember us just staring at it until it moved behind the upper roof thing on most barns. We went inside and woke up his older sister who was watching us. I think she was 16 at the time. She told us to stop messing with her and go to bed. We did go to the bathroom, but we didn't sleep that night. I still get nightmares. I also lived in a haunted house for a few years. My bed would shake, and you can hear the distinct sound of glass being set down on a kitchen counter. I'm in America, if that's relevant. I was in middle school, and my dad was very abusive about the very little things. I remember waking up every time he came home from the yogurt shop he owned around midnight or 1 a.m., absolutely terrified, and feeling my heart jump from the fear of hearing him climb the stairs to my room to wake me up by hitting me, or dragging me out of bed to kick and punch me for not doing some math problem correctly, or if I didn't clean something in the kitchen. Honestly, this went on for a while, and he got to the point of actually choking me, and then letting me go so I didn't pass out. I was so terrified to the point that even if he didn't come up, I would lay awake for an hour or two, around the time he would come to drag me out of bed, and couldn't get or fall asleep until I heard him go to bed. I'm sorry. That's just a terrible way to live, and I hope things did get better. But wow. Ugh. The scariest thing I've been through was the days I tried to end my life. When I was 8, my mom told me I needed to lose weight. It was not like I was obese. I was around average, but she wanted me to be skinny. She had me begin to eat healthier. She would check in to see my weight loss sometimes. When she said I needed to lose a little more, I began fasting so I would lose it. My mom found out and encouraged me to do so. Considering my age, this was a very bad choice for me, and it still affects me to this day. Sometime later, she began saying that girls needed to be thin in order to be pretty, to encourage me to lose weight. I was hurt by this because it was implied that I was not pretty because she had me on this diet to lose weight, so it meant I wasn't the way she wanted me. I went to talk to her about the way she said, and she began screaming at me, lecturing me about what she meant. It didn't change what I thought she meant. She was just trying to put it in a different way. It escalated to the point where I ran out crying. She had me get off that diet, but not because she felt bad and realized her mistakes. It's because my dad found out and wanted her to apologize. She didn't. I guess that was her way of it, though. It still affects me to this day, because now I have been struggling to eat meals. I don't feel like I need to, even if I want to, and I just don't feel okay anymore. After that, I began feeling hopeless, and just wanted to leave and be free. I had plot out so many ways for me to die. Even now, I have the slight temptation to just jump in front of a moving train or bus or car, It just scares me that I may not live to see the ones I grow and change and find who they are.